not a dude, you're a dude. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And what if we blame this on someone? My name is Shahir Dowd.
This is the only podcast about movies, specifically the 10 films, the top 10 of our top 10s of the 10 years that we've been doing this, 10 times this one being 11.
I could abbreviate that down or shorten that down to just the movie of the decade.
Right.
It's the movie of the decade.
It's the movie of specifically our decade.
We're the only podcast about movies, ergo, it's the movie of the decade.
You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
It's the movie of the decade episode, everybody. Welcome to this. Shahir, this was your brainchild that I instantly fell in love with.
You're blaming this on me.
No.
You should.
This was the brainchild. Like I was, what's the werewolf in Twilight's name who falls in love with the baby real creepy? I fell in love with this idea so creepily.
Okay.
Jacob, is that the werewolf in Twilight?
I don't know. I'm not.
Edward and Jacob. Yeah. Okay, it's Jacob. I imprinted hard on this idea.
Okay, so shall I?
This is your brainchild that I love very much.
Well, first off, let's back up just a second here. This week on May 20th, we're recording this on May 23rd. This week on May 20th, 2015, exactly 10 years ago to the day,
right,
we launched our first episode 1 on Mad Max Fury Road. And do you remember, we've talked about this night a few times, but for people who are listening in, if this is the first episode you've chimed in on, I apologize in advance, but welcome to the show.
Also, it's the best one to start with because you're going to get a lot of information very quickly.
It is going to be our movie of the decade episode. You remember that night, right? It was a fateful night, rainy, Brooklyn, thunder, lightning. We were sort of maniacally laughing over coffee and what have you. And we decided we had gone to see Mad Max Fury Road. Right. It was the second time I had seen it. I think it might have been the second time you had seen it. We had talked very loosely kind of as we went there.
In the MTV edits, we discussed doing this first.
Yeah, we were like, should we make a podcast? You know, like that seems like a cool thing that nobody's done before.
No one has ever done and no one will ever do. And it just seemed right.
It just seemed right. And then we went back to your apartment because you had, as you do now, a kind of mini recording studio at your apartment. You do a lot of voiceover work. You had another movie review show that was live streamed on YouTube.
It wasn't. I don't even know where it was streamed anymore. Right. I don't even think it was on YouTube. Was it on YouTube? No, it was on. I think it was streamed like via Vimeo or something.
Okay.
This was before you could do a lot of things. This was before Twitch. Yeah. That was Same Night Tonight.
Yeah.
Which was based on Same Night Movie Review. I've been doing reviews of films since I think I was like 22.
Okay, that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah, 106 years ago.
So we came back, and a weird thing happened, which was not a weird thing, but I guess we just kind of both decided if we're gonna do this, we need to do this as fast and as quickly as possible. So we came back, we recorded the episode. It's an hour long, I think, something like that. We set up an email account. We set up a Twitter account. We set up an Instagram account. We set up a SoundCloud account and was like, this has all got to be done tonight. Yeah. It all has to play out tonight. And then we released it that night, right? Mm-hmm. Like it was just like immediately. Mm-hmm. And then, I think for the better part of that year, so it was May of 2015, through to 2016. We only did like 20 something movies.
Yes. But it wasn't weekly.
Yeah, it wasn't weekly. It was just kind of as we did it. And, you know, like the second movie was a short film, Kung Fury. I think A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence was that our third episode?
I believe it was our third episode. Wow. Yeah.
So we were just kind of like putting this together as we went along, kind of making it up as we went. And then in the second year, you said, we have to do this every week. And that has been the case every week since that point.
I'm sorry / you're welcome.
No. I think it was a good thing because it was like a lot of this is being built up over just doing it, like and not thinking about it too much. We both. So again, for new listeners, we are both filmmakers, producers. We work on a lot of different projects across a lot of spectrums: TV, film, audio in your case as well. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the projects we work on outside of the only podcast about movies are things that take a long time, a lot of development, a lot of meetings, a lot of budgetary constraints, a lot of all the things that go into production. In fact, I think at the time we were making this, I was in production of the robot music video, which became part of
That's right.
galore.
I don't know what I was working on. Something for MTV.
We did Guy Code. We did Wild and Out. We've done,
this might have even been in the Engine Room days. Back that
the Engine Room?
Engine Room was that real weird reality show with a bunch of artists from all over the world that HP sponsored. Did you ever work on that?
No, I didn't work on that.
It was a surprisingly good reality show, but I think the shooting ratio was something like 378 to 1.
Right.
It was not well thought out.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been around the time. Again, a flash in the pan. None of you have ever seen that.
No, well, yeah. So the modus operandi of the podcast has always been do it quickly, don't think about it too much, get it out as quickly as possible. We don't get sponsorship, we don't get paid for this.
Actually, I think over the course of the last 10 years, I think I'm comfortable enough to say this. We have made roughly $900 and something over the past 10 years.
So which is huge.
Which actually, to be very clear, I know we're joking around about podcasts and things. That's probably in the upper echelon of a podcast that makes any money. Maybe not for one that's been around as long as ours.
Yeah.
But I'm still fairly proud of it.
But the point being is that we try to do this quickly, not think about it too much. Try to, it is kind of like the one thing that we do every week is we go see a movie. We get together for about an hour. We discuss it. We do some prep work outside of that. Last week we went to PAX East and I have a video about that, which I have not put out, which is ridiculous because that episode is already dropped and it probably is redundant now. Regardless,
that'd be fun.
That's all because we do have other lives, other work. In the 10 years since we have done that, life has changed a lot. In the first year, I had a son.
That's right.
Yeah, like a baby was born in that first year. I started a company. I have been writing several feature films and have had development on several of them, none of which have been made. After the robot music video, I did the studio tour of LA. So what happens when something of yours goes viral?
Right.
You get to go out and meet with the studios and pitch movies. So I went to Paramount and pitched movies, and I met with a few celebs that wanted to see what I was working on that thing. None of that has ever panned out, but we're still there. Matt, I started a company in that time.
You did.
Well. Matt, you started working with Extra Credits and then eventually took over Extra Credits.
Yeah.
Fill us in on the decade.
I don't know, man. I started this, I think, when I was an editor, and then I wanted to be a producer, and then I was doing that over at Viacom, and then a bunch of different places like True and Bravo and a couple other spots, just again on what I would consider sometimes really fun, but sort of like mill shows, like the ones that you very rarely are you tuning into the premiere of, but you enjoy it when they're there. I think Hack My Life was my favorite, sort of with Kevin Pereira
I worked on
and
that as well.
Brooke Van Poplin. And then I got the call to basically take over one of the two folks from Extra Credits who was retiring, and I was a fan of that channel. I'd been trying to pitch shows for them for maybe a year and a half, and I'd become friends with them.
Yeah.
And then, my life, I then became a YouTuber. And that has been a wild ride. Then, we kind of missed another thing. I forget what year this was, 3 or 4 years ago. Who the hell knows? But then because I was doing Extra History and Extra Credits, we recorded by Nebula. We joined the Nebula group, which then allowed us to basically move any sort of media property that we wanted to onto their stuff. So we that's why we release on Nebula a day early. Wow, that'd be crazy. Yeah. And then so we host through them, and then I've had a lot of opportunities through that, being on the Getaway or my recent Abolish Everything stint. Or
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, dude,
my Nebula account doesn't work.
I'll get you one. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
But the it's been a bit wild.
And you're getting married.
I am getting married. Yes. Yeah. But yes.
No, I'm saying we've gotten older. A lot of things have happened. I think for me, the definitive thing over the last 10 years has been raising my son, because and if we did it through the podcast, when he was born, we were doing special episodes on Star Wars. So I remember I would have to get up at 3 a.m. because he was, he needed to be fed.
Sure.
And I would watch maybe an hour of Star Wars while he went back to sleep. So he was watching Well, no, he was like in my arms
Yeah.
as a tiny.
He was present for.
Yeah, as a tiny little pod.
Yeah.
Pod creature of sorts. And now he has. So in the time that we've been doing this podcast, he has now graduated. He's grown up. He's talking, walking, and he has watched all those movies himself as well. He's really into Clone Wars right now, by the way.
There's enough episodes.
And then he's into his big thing is One Piece.
Yes.
He loves One Piece.
When we were at PAX, you were looking for a cosplay, a specific one for him, right?
Actually, fun thing that happened this week is I went along to the Mission Impossible premiere.
I wanted to ask about. Well, we'll talk about that. I think next week.
We'll talk about that during the Mission Impossible episode. But I don't know if anyone follows TikTok, but there's a great movie TikToker by the name of Straw Hat Goofy. If you have seen his content, he's great. He was there at the Mission Impossible premiere. I grabbed him at some point because he's a big, judging by his name, he's a big One Piece fan. I've watched him talk about One Piece. So I got him to make a
call him out.
Call a video to
That's a shout out
to my son to talk about his journey on One Piece. And he was very lovely, and he was genuinely, from what I could tell, very excited that there was a little kid who was just starting to watch One Piece. One Piece is such a big formative part of his career.
Side note, I know it's a bit of a tangent. Isn't it funny that a call out and a shout out are either a positive or a negative thing? A shout out is a positive thing. But if you call someone out, that's a negative thing.
Right. Okay.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, while you were telling that story,
language is interesting that way. Yeah. Shouting and calling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. Everywhere I go now, I basically try to get shout out to my son. I don't care about anything for me. It's when we were at PAX, there was a guy dressed up as
Dr. Robotnik.
Dr. Robotnik, and he was like, "Would you like a shout out?" And I was like, "I sure would."
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, doctor. Thank you.
So it has been a wonderful journey over the last 10 years. And so then, sorry for
we
that.
promise we'll get to the rules of what we're doing.
We'll get to the rules of what we're doing, which is that every year since that first year, even though we only did 22 films in that first year, we did a best of. So we have a top 10 for every year since 2015.
Specifically, a top 10 of the films that we reviewed on the podcast.
Yes, because we have also made it a thing, which is that we never really want to just say a movie's title and say, go watch it. We always want to have a conversation that you can go back to so you can kind of really digest what we thought about it, how we worked through that movie, and why it ended up on our list. So every year when we've done our top 10, it's only been of movies that we reviewed on the show.
Yes.
And so that means that there are 100 movies that have been collected into the database of top 10s of every year. Actually,
slightly more.
200 because...
or somewhere between 100 and 200 because sometimes Shahir and I's overlap.
Yeah. There's a wild thing that happens, which is that I think there was one year where we had 0 overlap, and then one year where we had 5 or 6 movies overlap, and then one year where we have only 1 movie overlap, which goes to show you how divergent our opinions can be. So for this episode, for the movie of the decade, I thought it would be really fun for each of us to pull up that list. It took us actually a little bit of time. You did a lot of work on this. To pull up that database of top 10s from every year, get that 100 movies. There was Matt's list, my list. And the rules that I set out were this, just to kind of give us a little bit of structure. They're arbitrary, of course. But for every year, pull out one movie. It could be either from Matt's list or Shahir's list, and make that the movie of that year. It doesn't have to be the top, the number one movie either, by the way. It's really a reflection of what movies have stuck with us, what movies have kind of made an impression with us. And then at the end of that, we will have 10 movies, one from each year. And now what we have to do is rank those movies. And then eventually we will get to a movie of the decade from Matt, a movie of the decade from Shahir, and we will leave it to the audience, I guess, to write us in, tell us which they feel is the movie of the decade.
Yeah, that seems to make sense.
I don't know. Let's see if we can make it work. A couple of little things on this. As I looked back on the movies of the decade, I think I picked out movies that weren't necessarily the biggest movie of the year. And wasn't my number one movie of the year either. I've been reading an autobiography, not an autobiography, some interviews with David Fincher. And there's a Mark Brauman book called Movies That Scar.
Sure.
And David Fincher talks about this a little bit, which is that he doesn't want to make movies that entertain. He wants to make movies that scar. And I really have latched onto that idea in the last few weeks because it kind of like informs a lot of what I love about movies and what I think about movies and why, and the movies that I particularly love are movies that kind of like leave an impression on you, and a permanent impression on you in some way.
1,000%. In fact, I had a very hard time picking the individual one for like per year on a couple things because, actually, I had a different reason. I had a harder time for two different reasons. So let's just, this is not correct, but let's say like if it 2019.
Okay, sure.
What if that year was an excellent year for film and there were 3 or 4 where I was like, oh man, like these all kind of stuck with me. So I had to kind of like go through and like pick the one that I thought would be the most, which is very difficult. There was also some 1 or 2 years in the thing that we did where I was like, none of these really truly stuck with me.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out like, well, what's the one I can take from this and still have it fit on the list and not have it be arbitrarily at the bottom. Like there's a whole bunch of mental gymnastics that you need to go through to get this working. What I've done, I don't know if you prepped your stuff like this.
Yeah.
I have my list, but from 10 to 1, and I've marked where it was and what year it was on the original list, if it was mine or both of ours, or et cetera, or just yours. And I also did basically a few like what I would consider honorable mentions, but ones that ultimately are not on this list, but that I had to fight that I had to fight hard, but still lost.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I think that's great because again, it's really the goal here isn't to anoint a film as the movie of the decade.
That's my goal. Though
we will,
yeah.
and we will send out a prize to whomever that filmmaker is. It is to have fun with movies and for listeners to kind of go, oh, I hadn't thought about that movie in a while. I'll go back and revisit that. And maybe I'll listen to the episode about it or something. We just want you to engage with movies. That's all we really want. That's the best emails that we get are when people go, I hadn't heard of this movie and I went and saw it because you guys had talked about it so much. And it changed my life, or it made such a deep impression. It scarred me in some way.
Yeah.
And that's all we really care about. So
speaking of scarring you.
Yeah.
We have 3 emails to get through, and then we promise we'll start this show.
Okay. Do you want to take the first one?
Sure. Let me just pull up this document right here. This is from Anika. Anika says, good morning. No, she doesn't. She says good afternoon. I'd like to correct that right off the bat. Matt and Shahir, hope you're both having a great day so far. I wanted to reach out belatedly and thank you folks for the shout out in your top 10 episode, which I really enjoyed. I believe that's probably from the last year's
top
one.
10.
I actually listened to it that week it came out, but then got busy and in my head wanting to say something witty or profound, which I realized meant I could be waiting forever. No, that's not true. We've heard from you before, Anika. Anyway, back to the email. I decided it was better to send a message anyhow than for months and months to pass. As a means of exposure therapy, here are the raw thoughts I wrote down as I was listening to the episode. Matt, Wicked didn't make your list? No, sorry. Shahir, no Nickel Boys. And Matt, Shahir, I love your Severance reference, RE sorting top 10 lists based on the scary number concept. Also, Matt, it's so cool how you know someone who worked on the number webpage. Shout out to the coding train.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to try it. Also, Shahir potentially seeing an inspo for that scene. Very cool. Problemista is so good. Highly recommend. I feel very honored that my email is mentioned after the Challengers mention. Yep. I can't wait to hear you folks talk about Sing Sing. So good. I looked up DJ Excision. I agree, Matt, you don't look like him, but the energy does seem to match. Oh, God. And then finally, you folks have gotten me to look at Rebel Ridge because from the poster, I thought it was another schlocky action thing, which I was not into. Now I think I will give it a go. So there you have it. Anyhow, wanted to share that I really enjoyed the discussion. Hope you guys are having a great rest of your day. Best, Anika. Thank you, Anika.
I will definitely watch Sing Sing. I think that's a movie from 2024 that we missed and we should catch up on. So I hope Anika will do a little bit of a trade here. I'll watch Sing Sing, or we'll watch Sing Sing if you watch Rebel Ridge. Prashant writes in, hope you're both well. I've been meaning to write to you a while since I watched Payal Kapadia's All We Imagine as Light, which I briefly mentioned in my best of 2024 email. Well, I had a chance to watch the film twice, the first time with Swedish subtitles, as is usually my norm here for all films. For the record, my Swedish reading skills are a hair better than my Malayalam, which is about 90% of what the film is in. I did watch the film a second time with English subtitles and pleasantly surprised to learn that I understood about 80% of the Swedish subtitles in the previous view. Any thoughts on passively picking up a foreign language through subtitles? I adore this film. As someone who lived and worked in Mumbai or Bombay, as some of us still refer to the city, I cannot emphasize just how beautifully and adept Capadia captures the everyday melancholy and transcendental beauty of the city. By the way, I'm mispronouncing that the filmmaker's last name, and it is embarrassing for me because I'm Indian. I was weeping the very moment the film shows, of all things, a crowded train platform. Without giving too much away, I think the choice to focus on women, migrants, and locals alike, especially those who work as nurses, is a wonderful storytelling choice. It views the city through the lens of those tasked with caring for its people, even though they face many forms of marginalization. Its representation of love, the amour of young lovers, the aching longing of long-distance marriage is so tender and heartbreaking. One particular image of the film, which relates to the marginalization of the urban poor, is so striking in its political commentary. I cannot recommend this film enough. I hope you have a chance to watch it soon, and we continue this discussion in some way. Best Prashant. Prashant, I mentioned this to you. I signed up to the Criterion channel on my birthday, and it is on my watch list. There was another, I used to have the Criterion channel a couple of years ago, so I don't have the name of this off the top of my head, but there was a female Indian documentary filmmaker who made documentaries in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was black and white, that looked at the lives of, in India, it's common to have servants or people that work in the house. Right. And it looked, it was quite a wonderful documentary about the lives of these people that work through the houses, often unseen. So I will, Prashant, and to everyone listening, I will try to track down who that filmmaker was so we can talk about it, and also get my pronunciations right, because I am letting down my entire family and ancestors at the moment.
Well, it's good you can admit it.
Yeah.
And lastly, but not leastly, a very quick one from Steven. Steven writes, I have to be honest, my expectation of the Thunderbolts were going in low, but I had a good time. I think they balanced the light and dark tone well, and all in all, not a bad movie. But then again, I liked Iron Man 2, so what do I know?
What do you know?
What do you know, Steven? Thank you for writing that in. I think I liked Iron Man 2. I have no problem with Iron Man 2. I flip-flop on Iron Man 3 real hard. But the
I from memory, you know, like, again, I watched Iron Man 2, I think, in the period where I was just kind of watching them without really thinking about the movies.
Sure.
And I didn't have a problem with it.
No, but no, Thunderbolts being a surprise. It's so funny that a Marvel movie is a surprise box office darling, but here we are.
I think you're saying it's a surprise is that it's good.
Yeah. Because it can make money, but also not be great.
Yeah. I believe Quantum Mania made $1 billion.
Of course.
Something like
Why
that.
not?
Shall we jump into our movie of the decade?
The movie of the decade. It is now. The time is now. We will now do our number 10s. Would you like to go first, Shahir?
Sure. So just for the record, my number one movie of 2015 was The Gift, the Joel Edgerton film. But the movie that I picked that scarred me in some way, that kind of left a deep impression. It left a deep impression for one scene, and left a deep impression because of the podcast, which is Roy Anderson's film, A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence,
Yay!
Which was my number 4 film that year.
Yes, yeah.
Now, the reason I love Roy Anderson, I talked about this on that episode, which is that I walked in completely unaware into one of his films at the New Zealand Film Festival, Songs from the Second Floor. And I was absolutely blown away by it because I felt like I discovered something new. And he was an extraordinary filmmaker who makes these sort of tableau films that are just sort of a series of vignettes that are all kind of based on one shot, and they're quite comically cynical for one, but also quite silly. They kind of, as we've kind of identified over the years, line up with my sense of humor, which is that they're serious and dark, but also quite silly and stupid at times, and I quite love that about that. But also, this was, as you mentioned, like our 3rd or 4th episode in the actual show run itself. And we went to see this movie together because it was only playing at a couple of theaters. We talked to people outside of the movie theater and we recorded some of the conversations. I liked this because I think about how you and I's opinions have changed over time with movies. And I feel like this was an opportunity. This particular movie was one of me introducing you to something that I particularly love.
Yeah. And we did, I think in 2019, we also did his film about endlessness. Is sort of like the same sort of vibe. I really love Pigeon. Pigeon, I think, was my number 9 of 2015.
Yeah.
It's something that I hadn't spent a lot of time with any film in this style before, and I instantly fell in love with it because it's just so interesting and rich and deep, and you are enamored with something that is basically not moving.
Yeah.
which is fun because you're not used to that in the medium.
It's like walking into a gallery.
Yeah, it's a diorama.
It's a diorama. But there is one in this particular film. Roy Andersson kind of has like a sort of bleak but comic out view of the world and the way the world works. And there is a particular scene, I don't know if you remember this, but in terms of scenes that scarred me and that I think about and that will always think about for the rest of my life, there's a particular scene in Pigeon Sat on the Branch Reflecting on Existence that has haunted me since. And it's kind of, I guess, when I looked at the movies that I picked over the 10 years, there has been a kind of recurring theme about both the downfall of humanity and the way in which we will try to pick ourselves up. And I think it's not entirely laid out correctly,
sure.
but I sort of thought about movies that really illustrated how humanity is capable of horror. And in this particular scene in A Pigeon Sat on the Branch Reflecting on Existence, there's a scene where it looks like Africa, but I'm not entirely sure. It is a country that has colonized a group of African people. And what they are doing in this particular scene is they have this large device, which is a rotating cylinder with these sort of like protruding holes that are coming out of it. And they are marching all these African villages into this cylinder, a metal cylinder. Then in horror, because the film is like all a single take, they set the bottom of that cylinder alight. And the cylinder begins to rotate. And what's terrifying is what comes out of that cylinder is a sort of beautiful harmony, beautiful music, which then the camera cuts to, and a group of very old kind of blue bloods, aristocrats come out hobbling, to listen to the music of what they have wrought. And I think that is a beautiful encapsulation of what Roy Andersson does. It's bleakly funny, but also completely terrifying and dark and horrifying. And also resonant in terms of the way colonization worked and the way that humanity has viewed people as others and commodities for their own enjoyment. And thinking about movies that scar, that was one. Even though that was the year of Mad Max Fury Road, a lot of stuff that we saw. The Gift, I thought, as we mentioned before, was a great one, but that scene stayed with me.
Yeah, that's the one that I remember all the time in that movie. I just remember I liked the entire thing. But again, that was 10 years ago.
That was 10 years ago. So what was your number 10 from 2015?
Well, it's funny. So that's not how I'm doing it. I'm moving all around. Are we going in order of the years?
Oh, no.
Did I misinterpret?
No, you're correct, actually. That was my number 10 of 2015, but it was also my number 10.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So my number 10 of the movies of the decade actually comes from 2023.
Okay.
And it was this is a hard one for me because there were two other movies that came out that year that have scarred me or stuck with me for very different reasons. The two that did not make it are Beau is Afraid and the Dungeons and Dragons movie. For different reasons that we don't have to get into now. I imagine you can guess. One is anxiety, one is tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah.
But no, my number 10 for this decade list is actually my number 1 for that old 2023 list, and that is The Holdovers.
The
Holdovers is very rarely, not since, and this is going to make it sound trite.
Yeah.
So, but let me say it and I'll back up. Not since Jingle All the Way have I added a film to my holiday rotation.
Okay.
And that's actually saying something. There's a lot of holiday movies that do come out. And while Jingle All the Way, actually something that's been very prominent on this podcast, we've had the writer come on and talk to us. We've reviewed it. We've done special emails on it. We've done a decent amount of episodes on Jingle All the Way.
Yeah.
But The Holdovers is just something that is so special to me. It where Jingle All the Way takes the holidays and is very it's farcical, but it's also very honest about what the holidays have turned into and how you can still basically consumerism, but how you can maneuver that to be meaningful for you if you try. It's a lot of different ways that I actually look at film in general. The Holdovers sort of looks at another angle of the holiday that you don't often get very well. And that is sort of the being left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts you into just a wonderful world that you instantly feel bonded with because of how well it is crafted. And just obviously Paul Giamatti, Divine, and I believe Brady Hepner, I think is the actor's name. Dominic Sessa, pardon. They're sort of found family in a difficult situation around the holidays is just so moving, and kind of also reminds me like another angle of what happens around that time, and it's something that I like to be reminded of. And so while it has only been in the rotation for 2 years now, 1 year, no, 2 years, I guess.
It's a great movie.
It's so good. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely think it's funny. You can watch it any time of the year. Yeah. I think just save it for when it's snowing outside, if it snows where you are, or at the very least in the like winter holiday months, because there's some pull to it that is very connected to that time of the year. And maybe it's because it takes place then, or maybe because on a personal level, I don't know if I've ever felt as lonely as I have, not at the holidays. Like I feel like the holidays in general for me have been on a few times like a very lonely time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It vibes so hard for me, and I was pleased that it beat out the other two in my mind, because it's something that I think I'm just going to keep watching once a year, and that's a good sign to be on a decade list.
Yeah, and it's got some of the it's Alexander Payne. It's got some of the best writing in terms of insult writing that he directed it, but I don't know if he wrote it. Because I recall there was a WGA controversy around that film.
It says David Hemmingson wrote it.
But I think one of the best lines from that movie is that you are the very personification of penile cancer.
Yeah.
Something like that, which I think was great. It's a fantastic movie. It's definitely up there. This is this common theme you're going to see through these lists here is we're talking the best of the best.
Yeah.
So every movie here is extraordinary.
I do have. I'm just looking at my list real quick. Yeah. I do think I have one, maybe two that you'll be like, "What?"
Is Deadpool and Wolverine on here?
I'm not going to spoil anything.
You're also correct, which is that we shouldn't do this chronologically. We should do this numerically by the place that the movie ended up on our list.
We can say where they were.
Yeah. So you came in at 2023. I came in at 2015. My next movie came in, and I have to do this manually now while I'm
do the math. Carry the 4.
It came in 2017. It was my number 3 movie of 2017. It was one of the first movies that we'd done that was a Netflix release. It was a Netflix. It wasn't produced by Netflix, but it was purchased by Netflix. I recall on that episode, we got into a semantic discussion about the definition of scope and epicness.
That sounds like us.
Yeah, that sounds like us. But this is Dee Ree's film Mudbound, which is a film that has kind of, in many ways, not stuck the conversation since we had that since we discussed it. It's not a movie that's often mentioned much. It is a movie about the Jim Crow. We just did Sinners this year, but this is a movie set in the Jim Crow South about returning with soldiers that are returning from war. And a family that is returning to a farm where two families have kind of become fallen into poverty because of the way that land laws operated. One is white and one is African American. And this year I had, I started reading the book Cast by Isabella Wilkinson, and I am finishing that this year. I'm almost done with it now. And remembering this movie, recall so much of the horror that I'm reading about in Cast in Isabella Wilkinson's book. Talks about the distinctions between the way African American people and white people have been treated over time. I think maybe I think it's an extraordinary piece of storytelling. It's a $10 million film. Dee Rees has done a couple of movies since then. She did a film with Ben Affleck and Anne Hathaway a few years later, which I don't think did very well, and a lot of TV after that. I have still high hopes for this filmmaker, and I think this is such an extraordinary piece of filmmaking off the bat. It was the second film, I believe. And, to not put a political point on it, but I'm going to, we are in the next 4 years going to be talking about diversity, equity, inclusion as boogeymen for everything that is not, for standing in as woke being a bad thing. And that includes removing parts of like collected histories from libraries and that sort of things, talking about how actually disparate people were treated, and still continue to be.
We have a series of shorts coming out on Extra History called "Recently Deleted History."
Yeah. And so there was a lot of great movies that came out that year. Phantom Thread, Mother, that we both picked as one of our favorites. Call Me by Your Name, Florida Project, Logan. But this is the one that scarred me in some way. That kind of left an impression on me. That made me think about it more. That made me, when I look back on it, go, I would happily revisit that and happily want to encourage people to go and search out that movie. It's available on Netflix.
Nice. Actually, I don't know. Mine might be Netflix. Hold on. My next one might be. Let me double check that, because that'd be weird.
Why don't you say what it is, and then we can.
No, because the problem is then you'll know. No, it is. It's Netflix. Okay, so this is one I think you're going to be like, what?
There's no wrong answers here.
This is my number 2 from 2021.
Okay.
That is now my number 9 on the definitive decade list, and that is Inside by Bo Burnham. I really did think if you'd said a Deadpool versus Wolverine or something like that, I would have been like, what? Inside by Bo Burnham? Give it time.
100%.
So I resonated incredibly deeply with this. Obviously, this was sort of right at the tail end of the meat and potatoes of the COVID epidemic.
Yeah.
And it was a reflection of like a new way of sort of making a movie. Granted, there are not necessarily a new way of, but like a very small but complex way of making a movie by yourself while you are locked inside. And I know that there are, obviously Bo Burnham has enough money and was very privileged to like basically take a section of his home and turn it into a studio for a year and play until he got something extraordinary. But that thing he got, I think, resonated so hard with so many people at that time. It's going back and watching it again, even, years later, it feels so both of the time and, oh God, we're still here.
Yeah.
And we're not stuck inside physically, but it does feel like between the news cycles and the constant rewriting of reality, like everything we're experiencing feels very trapping.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie is something that its meaning and what it says to me over time has changed. It went from being scared and alone from being from a global pandemic to sort of like being scared and alone in a economic pandemic of our own accord. And I think I don't know, there's something about it that just worked on a level that no other film was able to sort of hit for me. And I'm just, I'm very thankful for it. And I'm glad, again, shout out to Netflix, I guess, for getting this not only out, but this is one of those things that I feel like really, very rarely do I say, oh, a movie being released on Netflix is a strength for it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want that big experience in the theater. But I feel like tonally and topically, the only place this could release is on Netflix. This was a movie that you watched alone in your home.
Yeah.
And it just it slaps. It's also hilarious.
It's hilarious. I think this is a great choice for many reasons. One of the things is that as we were kind of recounting the decade and things that have happened to us over the decade, or things that we've gone through, we omitted the fact that the world went through a global pandemic that lasted 2 to 3 years, 4 years, 4 years.
Technically, it has not stopped.
Yeah.
Thanks to vaccines for who knows how long we'll have those.
Yeah.
And a couple other things. Many people have gone back, but there's still people dealing with long COVID. The economy never really bounced entirely back.
Millions of people died.
Yeah.
So we went through a once in a generation event, life-changing event. And this movie, I think you're absolutely right to put this on your list. I'm surprised it's not even higher, to be honest with you, because it reflects both a change in the way we communicate with each other, which is that it actually does feel kind of like a series of TikTok vignettes or scenes that someone has put together in their in their home in the way that people do now as well and communicate. But it also has been collated together to form greater meaning as a film and speaks to the idea of what films do that are slightly different to what social media does. Not that there's not meaning in social media. And it is it is a solo project that he made entirely on his own. It is very funny. It is very angry at the way the world has turned out. It is very embittered by loneliness. And I think I'm seeing between the two films that you've picked so far, I would say there's a connecting thread here, and I don't know if it'll continue, but it's searching for connection amidst deepening loneliness.
You just wait.
Yeah.
You just wait.
And like the thing about a list like this, as we're pulling from 100 films and we're basically saying, what are the ones that really speak to me, is that the list becomes more about you than it does than the movies.
What are you talking about? These are just things that are now out there and have nothing to do with my internal struggles.
Yeah, it's a really great choice.
Speaking of great choices, what was your number 8?
As I mentioned earlier, I have I'm a deeply cynical person. I am a deeply deeply sad person, and I look to movies to not entertain me, but to reflect upon the things that I am feeling in my life, and to find ways for those films to give me some sort of sense of solace or understanding of the world. And that understanding doesn't have to be positive. Like, I'm not looking to be, to forget what the world is. But at the same time, I am a dad with a terrible sense of humor, and I love nothing more than a good old fart joke and a dumb joke about animals and poop and all that sort of stuff. And so my number 7 film comes from now, which year was this? This was 2021 as well, which was where Inside came from as well, right?
No. Yes.
And it is an animated film that was my number 1 film of that year, The Mitchells versus the Machines.
I figured, after looking at both lists, that would be on yours at some point.
Now,
it was in my list too. I just don't remember. It was not my number 1. I think it was if I scroll back down here, it was my number 8.
This film,
which makes sense for now because it's your number 8.
It is my number 8. Yeah, it is. This film fills me with so much joy in a year that, in a decade in which we got, Into the Spider-Verse, as far as, sort of the changing face of animation. This was an original property that was really about a family, a filmmaker within that family, about artificial intelligence trying to take over the world, much like the entity in Mission Impossible, but tells all of that in a much richer way with sincerity and heart that actually makes me weep every time I watch it. And I think it is a beautiful encapsulation of what I guess I would coin as blockbuster filmmaking can do, which is that it is action driven. It is designed to entertain.
Yeah.
But it actually really has genuine thought, emotion, and truth to it. We've done many Pixar movies on this podcast, but this is the animated feature that really brings me joy. It is about the downfall of society. It is about our inability to understand the kind of technology that surrounds us. It is, there's a tech billionaire in here who unleashes an artificial intelligence on the world, which ends up entrapping the world. But it is about the smallest group of people, a weirdo group of family that come together and end up saving the world because despite their weirdness and their strangeness and their flaws and their mistakes, they are always able to come together.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I agree with all that. I have a weird personal tie to this movie, but it's almost like twice removed.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this on the podcast, but on our episode for it, but our extra history artist, Allie, who is a phenomenal person and caricature artist, she is friends with what I believe the lead animator or art director on The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Yeah. And I clocked this the second I watched it. The main character, the mother, looks exactly like Allie.
Right.
And there is no doubt in my mind, that the guys thought that when I watched it. And then when Allie told me that, I was like, oh, she based this on you.
Right.
And it is, I don't know. So now whenever I watch that movie, I just feel more connected with it. And the movie itself obviously stands on its own. That's just my personal connection to it.
I mean, to bring it to your film Inside as well, it is also a movie about the the trappings of social media, because it is an artificial intelligence that spreads on our phone. And these the characters basically use memes to fight off the artificial intelligence, but also the families look at other families that like are perfect on social media and feel lesser than.
Yep.
And I think John Legend and Chrissy Teigen are the other family.
Yes.
Who are so perfect that that makes them feel bad, but they always come together. They prove that they are valuable even if they're not big on social media. I love this movie.
Excellent. Well, my number 8 comes from 2020. I feel like I haven't broken the 2000s.
Oh,
yet,
right.
Which
so that means the higher films are earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Okay, I'm continuing the Netflix trend.
Yeah.
And this is one that I just looked. 3 of my films are Netflix films, which is very interesting to think about. But this one is, I think, interesting because it might be the only one that does not have a physical release.
Okay.
Which is very, 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 it is. It's the only one of my Netflix films that does not have a physical release. It's super sad because I do check to see if this movie is available to buy, because I do worry very much about a streaming service being the only place you can see a film.
Mm-hmm.
At any whim, for any reason, it could just go away and you never get it again. Mm-hmm. Which actually is apt for the film that I'm about to release, because my number 8 is my number 1 from 2020. I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Fantastic film.
I've seen it, and this is the interesting thing. This is not a movie that, and granted, it's only been 2020, but this is not like an every year watch for me.
Yeah.
I've watched this movie 3 times, and each time, it has meant something different. I don't want to spoil anything about like the meaning or whatever is sort of behind it, but it really does speak to a video essayist, Karsten Runquist, said a quote in a thing that I really, really liked. And I don't want to, I'm trying to not ruin what this movie is in case you haven't seen it, because it's very much worth going in blind. And the first time you watch it, you will get something very different from the second time you watch it. You will get something very different from the third time. I've again watched it 3 times. But what Kirsten says is, what you bring to the world is a product of someone else's doing. And I think that's a very interesting message for a movie to say. And this movie is all about that in a lot of different ways. It is about, there's a line in the movie, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, we like to think of ourselves as objects moving through time, but it's really the other way around.
Time is moving through us.
Yeah. Like it looks at what we are, what our own self actualization is the wrong word, like what we consider ourself is.
Yeah.
And it deconstructs that and makes it this is the other thing. I think it is a horror movie, but it does not play like one.
Yeah.
And so, kicking down the loneliness trip of my top, my 10, 9, and 8. It couldn't go to anything else. This movie, it rocks my socks, and I need to find a way to legally own it. I don't know. There's no plans that I've seen for a physical release of it.
This is a Charlie Kaufman film as well. We did Anomalisa on the podcast as well. So we've done 2 Charlie Kaufman films over the 500 and something episodes that we've done. Charlie Kaufman had this thing, for those who remember, he was the hit screenwriter of Being John Malkovich, an adaptation, which kind of made him the go-to guy for quirky, surrealist film. And he talked at length, I think later on, I watched a BFI talk with him where he, basically budgets for him are getting much lesser. People are less willing to fund things that he does. And it strikes me as odd because despite the fact that there was like a moment of pop for him with Being John Malkovich, an adaptation, he is still an extraordinary filmmaker. And what I love about, I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Anomalisa as well, is that they are movies that kind of live and breathe within those liminal, awkward spaces that are in between our thoughts. It's almost like the intrusive, the movies are almost like depictions of our most intrusive thoughts. Mm-hmm. And they're really effective. And the thing about I'm Thinking About Ending Things is a surreal trip home with a couple who are going to visit their family, and it gets stranger and stranger as it goes on. And then as you kind of illustrated, it is a film that really gets to the heart of like what is our identity, like who are we actually in this story.
And how is that built?
And how is that constructed over time? And how the extrapolation of that is then, therefore, what do we see in other people's stories? And that's kind of like what filmmaking is, and what my passion for film is that how do we see ourselves in other films?
And this movie itself also dives into that, both as a esoteric question, but also quite literally the media, like other media, other films, books, paintings play incredibly prominently in this movie.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have seen them or read them. The movie, like, it does a great job, like, showing it both in the foreground and the background of how, like, media has shaped characters in this film's lives. And like, sometimes it's a direct quote, sometimes it's just seeing a copy of The Thing on a VHS wall.
Yeah.
Because this movie takes place a lot through driving through the snow. Like, there's a lot of small little things here. I don't know. It's great, and it's a tragedy that you can't actually own it anywhere else but on Netflix.
Yeah, watch it now.
Yeah.
I did categorize. I managed to sort of apply a category of films to my next, to the remaining list, and I call the next two films. I'm only going to talk about one right now. Is the depictions of individual downfalls.
Okay.
And the first one is a movie that kind of really hit me hard.
Here's your number 7.
It's my number 7 movie, which is also a Netflix movie.
God damn it, Netflix! What are you doing?
And it came to us in what year did it come to us? It came to us. Oh my, sorry.
It could be any year. Make it up
came
at
to us.
home.
No, it came to us in 2019. So it is. It is in the aughts, and it was my number 2 film of that of 2019, and it is Marriage Story by Noah Baumbach.
Whoa!
Made my list at number 7 because I think about this movie a lot. Now, my wife and I watched this together. The running joke of Marriage Story was that don't watch it with your partner, because it's such a movie that's frayed at the edges about the way relationships fall over time. I think a really good partner film to Marriage Story would be David Fincher's Gone Girl, because that is a film about a couple really falling apart in different ways as well. And but my wife and I, we joke about like this movie because she was like, it looks like divorce is hard, is so hard, like it's such hard work. And so apologies to anyone who has, been through that and, the way that they struggle through that. But I think what I loved about this, I love Noah Baumbach as a writer. He, of course, was one of the writers on Barbie. And the thing that I think about here is the way in which little moments of human activity can become weaponized against you in this fight for separation. And I love this idea that, like, throughout this movie, we see Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver really battling with each other over tiny little details of their relationship. And it's an exploration of what their relationship actually was and how it worked. And in the end, it comes to a place where there is a deeper understanding of the things that they actually wanted from each other, and the things that they actually got out of each other. So I really loved this movie, and I think it's again another movie that scarred me in terms of like making such a deep impression that it made me think about how relationships fall. And again, I put this in a category of individual downfalls.
But isn't that a double downfall?
Sure.
But no, well, there are 2 individuals who downfell.
Yeah, who fell down.
Who fell down.
And I'm saying that because the other 3 movies after this are about societal downfall.
Oh, interesting. Okay. A Marriage Story, I remember when I watched it, it was highly effective, but it's never been one that I've sort of latched back onto. Maybe it's because I am not yet married.
You're about to be.
I'm about to be. Maybe I'll revisit it and it'll be a completely different thing.
Yeah.
But I do, the thing that I do remember about it was just how effective it was, as at least what I assume extrapolating that feeling is to a generalized audience. I think people have told me, I've known a few people who have gone through divorce and 2 have talked to me about A Marriage Story, and they said it felt highly accurate. So it's like, again, my data group is not sound in any way, shape, or form. But for me, who has not experienced it, I'm always a sucker for a movie that can take me to a place and give me an emotional echo of what that must feel like. And that movie does that in a heartbeat. It does it so well. It puts you right into that sort of pain and or shame spiral. And as much as that does not seem like fun, when dealing with it through the lens of a film, I think it's more palatable. And I don't know. I like that movie quite a bit.
All right. What's your number 7?
My number 7 is something okay, you know what? My next 3 are what I would consider game changer films.
Okay.
Films that have recontextualized the medium in one way or another. The next 2 I feel like are more like the industry, and then the next one after that is more me personally.
Okay.
But when this movie dropped in 2017, it was actually my number 10 movie. And Shahir, it was your number 2 movie. The movie I am about to mention is Jordan Peele's Get Out.
Get Out.
Get Out took horror and made it prestigious. In my opinion, it brought a level of, because horror movies in the past before Get Out, there are prestigious horror movies, of course. There are The Exorcist, The Shining. Like there are things that are thought of as classics in the genre, but also a lot of them are just like monster movies, slasher movies. And again, that's not downplaying them. That's just like how I feel like society sort of viewed them. I think they all have value in different ways, and I'm a sucker for the biggest, dumbest monster nightmare film as the next guy. But Get Out did something where it felt like the first modern horror film to not only do something and say something different, but that like it came out and everyone's like, oh, that's how it's done. And now I feel like a lot of horror movies that we get are using, and this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This is how the media, it goes back to what we were talking about in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Media that we consume builds us. It builds kind of who we are. If we are an entity that is all about sort of perception, there's the nature and nurture, but this is the nature part of it, right? Or the nurture part of it. I think Get Out changed the game as to what we now come to expect from horror. I don't think you get something like Sinners without Get Out. I think it managed to get people who might not have taken horror seriously, and I mean this more in an industry way than a fan way, and be like, oh, like this isn't just for super low budget things. Not to say that horror says a lot in a lot of different ways, but oftentimes horror is an air quotes easier and cheaper type of film to make 9 times out of 10 than say like a period piece, right? Because it doesn't take as much financing. So I don't know. I think that what Jordan Peele did with Get Out, making a tense, terrifying, societally resonant and hilarious movie all rolled into one, I think just nailed it above and beyond. And I do think that horror has changed because that was such a huge hit.
I think as well with Get Out, which I did consider as one of the most, there are 1 or 2 films on here that I kind of consider the most impactful in terms of the decade. And, we'll see where these ends up on our list, but you've just mentioned one, Get Out, but Mad Max Fury Road, I think, is another one as well. The thing about Get Out and Jordan Peele that I think about a lot is how much he pinched a nerve in terms of how audience perceive what is going on, and it has to do with race relations. The first song in that movie is Childish Gambino's song "Stay Woke." And it is a movie about like being active on what is happening in society at any moment. There's a sequence at the end of that movie when a police car turns up. And I remember being in a theater with that, a very packed theater, and everyone in the audience felt deflated because they knew what was going to happen here, which is that this African-American character is going to be not believed when the police turn up. And I think the sort of power in Get Out and the reason why it won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars that year is that Jordan Peele pinched a real nerve on the way race relations are done. And it is something that they did in their show really well. There's a great sketch that I have rewatched many times over called, I can't remember what the name of the sketch is, but Suburban Zombies.
Oh, yeah.
And basically Jordan Peele and Keegan Michael Key, is that his name?
I believe
are trapped in a zombie apocalypse. And they're in a neighborhood, and the zombies won't touch them because they're black.
Yeah.
And so like the zombies are winding up their windows and being like, I would have voted for him twice, you know, like I could have, that kind of thing. And so all the black people in that neighborhood get together for a barbecue and they're like, this is the best place ever because the zombies are racist zombies. And I, you know, like it's the thing about Get Out is this idea of black bodies being inhabited, being desired and coveted by white people who do not want to be black.
Yeah.
And it's this sort of, you know, beautiful idea that, you know, someone like Bell Hooks would have tapped onto, but Jordan Peele does it in a way through comedy and horror. And again, just pinched a nerve. And if, you know, there's a very valid argument to be made that is actually that Get Out is the movie of the movie of the decade.
Sure.
Without a doubt. It is, fascinating.
What is your number 6?
My number 6 is also a horror movie, but not one that would ever be classified as a horror movie. It is a movie that, you know, charts the terror of one person's individual downfall. And I'm not saying that, you know, this is always the case, but it particularly resonated with me because it is about an artist losing their power. Losing their ability to do the thing that they do.
Oh, I know what you're going to talk about.
Yeah. But then finding dignity in embracing something new in their life. And it is one of the most human films I saw over the last decade. And that is The Sound of Metal. You know, Riz Ahmed delivers a towering performance in this film about a drummer who is losing his hearing. And the struggle of the one thing that defines you being taken away from you. And I think about that a lot in terms of I have poor vision, for example. I've contemplated LASIK, but then I wondered about would that change the way I see the world? You know, kind of thing.
It would make it clearer.
Yeah, but not the actual optics of it, but the perception of the world. Like my perception of the world is through frames. And if
I got you.
If I didn't have those frames anymore, would I see the world differently? And would I navigate the world differently?
Have you ever done contacts?
Yeah, I did. I have. And you're taking it very literally. As
sorry. No, I'm trying to latch in. I'm trying to yes and, but apparently I'm no buddy.
Yeah. Well, because the one thing that defines the character in The Sound of Metal is his ability to hear and his ability to interpret sounds around him into his art. And that's what, you know, like what all artists do. And so when he starts to lose it in this film, for me, it's a horror movie. It is one of the most absolutely terrifying things. And it's terrifying for him. And I think the power of the movie is that he has to come to terms with it by the end of it. And this movie travels. It's extraordinary. The writer of it wrote Darius Marder wrote The Place Beyond the Pines with Derek Cianfrance as well. Group of filmmakers that Darius Marder and Derek Cianfrance, two filmmakers that I really, really like. I think he did Derek Cianfrance did a TV show called This Much I Know Is True, which was based on a Wally Lamb book, which I read, and it's fantastic. And in both these cases, these are films about people really struggling with the world around them. And that is a feeling that I have all the time. You know, right now, I was texting a friend of mine, I'm in a perpetual state of anger. You know, right now, as far as the world is concerned, I'm perpetually angry about everything. And, you know, to have the world turn on you in the way that it does in this film is quite challenging and difficult and, you know, but ultimately beautiful. And I don't think I would, but I would hope I would have as much dignity as this film says people can have in a situation like this.
Yeah, the way the journey that he takes on this movie is hard to watch in the most beautiful way.
Yeah.
If you've ever lost something that was definitive to your life, it's incredibly relatable. I don't know, this movie was an incredibly hard but important watch. I think is kind of where it landed for me. No, but I remember specifically how much you loved and connected with that movie. It's a great film. It's an absolutely great film. My number 6 comes from 2019, which does have an honorable mention. not for this spot, just picking a movie to be like,
Sure.
this would have been reordered had this movie been replaced with the one I'm about to say. Dr. Sleep, I really actually connected with a lot going back to the horror thing. There's a lot to be said about that, but I won't because it didn't make the list.
Dr. Sleep is the honorable mention?
It's the honorable mention.
Okay, gotcha.
Because my number 6 from 2019, both of our number 1s is Parasite.
Of course.
Parasite, again, changing the game. First foreign language film to win Best Picture. That's a huge undertaking, and it's very much deserved. I think that the strength of this movie and why it got global acclaim is that it is able to, in an entertaining and poignant and often terrifying way, really speak to and show in detail both the class divides that it deals with, but also the intimate moments that happen between classes. Like, for instance, like, slight spoilers for Parasite, there are two families, one very rich and one living in a basement that is very poor. And the poor family, through happenstance and honestly being very clever, managed to sort of infiltrate the lives of all of the rich people with different jobs. The father becomes a valet, the daughter becomes an art teacher for the child. And the entire time it is speaking to the sort of symbology and the very, very both symbolic and realistic class divides through this, to the point where they do a lot of stuff with even it's funny that a movie does something like this, but smell is a big proponent in this, where the thing that might give them away as not being who they say they are is the little boy says that that a bunch of them smell the same.
Yeah.
And it's because of where they live in their socioeconomic class and all of that. And also, it does get weird and twisty by the end. And so, like, I feel like it had all of the concoction to make something that could transcend basically the 1-inch barrier or whatever the subtitles are called. And that's his quote, right?
Yeah. Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah. That, like, even when you have to read what's going on screen, this movie is crafted so exquisitely that it doesn't matter. Like, you truly... And I'm not saying you should do this, but I do believe you could not have subtitles on, don't speak the language, and understand this movie completely.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a credit to him and the entire team that made it. I think it is one of the greats. It's one of the, at this point, it's almost like 50-50 whether or not Best Picture is something that is like, oh man, this is going to be remembered forever. And this is definitely one of them.
I think that's the Parasite. First off, we did Okja in 2017, and I got to talk about Bong Joon-ho at that time. And it was great that this has happened a couple of times where, like, for example, we celebrated the Daniels film Swiss Army Man early on. And then just a few years later, the Daniels won Best Picture.
Look at us, tastemakers.
and the same with Bong Joon-ho in 2017. And then we got to talk about, him in Parasite. It is arguably, in the years that we've been doing this podcast, the one film that has won Best Picture in that time that everybody agrees upon, that every single person says, yes, that was the Best Picture of that year. Yeah. Like, no, unquestionably, that was the one. And like, nobody's like, saying anything else about it. It is the thing that makes that one challenging is oddly the thing that also makes it great, is it is ostensibly, and I'm struggling to figure out if I can argue this in my head, it is a perfect movie. It is undeniably like a perfect movie.
Never feels like a misstep.
There's not a misstep in that movie, and it escalates, and it is beautifully like expansive in its world as well. It does things that you are surprised by, but by the time you get to the end, you're like, of course it was going to do that. I loved when we did that episode because we got to talk about Frank Lloyd. We got to talk about a few of my favorite things, which was architecture and Bong Joon-ho.
Yep.
So I think it's a beautifully designed film. Bong Joon-ho wrote the intro to the David Fincher book I'm reading right now, which is written by Adam Naiman. And he talked because Bong Joon-ho did Memories of Murder and David Fincher did Zodiac, and those two films kind of line up in terms as far as the serial killer genre films. So. And Bong Joon-ho talked about this idea that there are films that are soft and curvy, and then films that are curvilinear, so like made up of hard lines. And he says, David Fincher makes films that are all made up of hard lines, like that have sharp edges. And Bong Joon-ho is kind of like, he can do both. If you look at a film like Okja or Mother, those are films that are sort of made up with soft edges. But Parasite is both soft and hard as well. It is like sleek and sexy. It's beautiful to look at, but it is filled with like these really wry observations about human beings and their failures, and also their aspirations and their continue ability to fail at their aspirations, but still go.
Yeah.
It's superb film. It didn't make my list, but only because there are a couple of films on my list where I went, I think that film has really been celebrated, and I have.
You didn't want to keep. You're like, I want to do one that people aren't celebrating,
or that I think is really interesting that may not be talked about as much. Yeah. But I'm not denying the celebration here. Like, it's a beautiful film. Yeah. My number. So the last two films I sort of defined as films about individual downfall. This next film, you could certainly argue the downfall has already happened by the time the film begins. It's also a film that I really enjoyed in terms of our conversations, because it was an early film from 2016 where we really talked about the things that we look for in films that are very different from each other.
Right.
And I think, like part of the podcast has actually been really useful in terms of like, the things that I like aren't the things that you like necessarily, and that's not a bad thing. Those are just like, we look at the world very differently.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to try and put yourself through that prism. So the film for me, this is our number 5. Yeah, like we're middle of the list, is Laszlo Nem's film, which won best foreign film that year, Son of Saul.
Okay,
a film about a Jewish man in Auschwitz or during the Holocaust, who is tasked with being a commandant to round up a Sonderkommando, I think it was called.
Yeah.
To round up other Jewish people to take them to the ovens or to the killing rooms. And he is obviously torn by this, but is resigned to the fact that this is the way the world is going to work, and he's being rounded up to do so, and he's going to do it in order to survive. And then through the course of that film, he realizes that his son may have been inside one of the killing rooms. And his journey from that film is not to try and escape, not to try and end the war, not to try and kill Hitler, as we would see in a Quentin Tarantino movie or something like that. But his journey of the film is to try and give his son a proper burial, because it will in a world where society has fallen. The downfall has happened. There is another movie called Downfall about the last days of Adolf Hitler in Germany. His job or his task with himself is to try and regain a small glimmer of his humanity within that awfulness around him. Think about that a lot in my cynicism and the way I look at the world.
Yeah, I remember this was this is a movie, again, very, very hard watch, but like poignant and important. Not hard because of any skill. It is definitely crafted. It is. You kind of hit the nail on the head. It's brutal and beautiful, and has a very. It does help to think about, in a time where we have to look at a lot of horrors, how those horrors can be looked at. Which then brings us to my number 5, which is a far less serious film.
Okay. Is it Deadpool versus Wolverine?
It is not Deadpool versus Wolverine.
Okay.
Are you really worried that Deadpool versus Wolverine is going to make my list?
Look, I'm not going to be worried. I might just be a little disappointed.
Listen, I'm not saying a goddamn thing. No, this is a movie from 2022.
2022.
That did not make your list.
Did not make my list.
That I This is a weird one, and I'm glad that I made it my number 5, because it's not that this is bending the rules a little bit. It's not that I think it's better than the previous films that sort of come up, but what it did was it made me realize something that I wanted in movies that I don't get enough. And now I have seen, ever since seeing this movie, I've been watching other movies and being like, man, I hope this does X like X did it. because I want it. I want it deep in my bones. And that is my number 5 pick, Barbarian. Look, it is an excellently crafted horror film from
Zach Krieger.
Zach Krieger, who is from The Whitest Kids You Know and does a couple other things as well. But it takes the horror genre again, and not like it doesn't change. I don't think Barbarian changed the game at all like Get Out changed the game. I think Barbarian changed what I want from my horror movies. I want surprise. I think I'm there. I want it to be something that changes my perspective of what I am watching, both at a breakneck speed, but also one that feels earned. And I think that Barbarian did a very technical gimmick and or trick at the highest level. And now whenever I'm watching a horror movie, I'm always like, or almost any genre, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if X happened and I was surprised? Because in this world, and again, and I know surprise is something we can all work on too. Like I watch trailers, you don't watch trailers. In fact, it's funny, the Superman trailer, it's number 2 just came out, and I'm starting to figure out the plot. Like, knowing nothing, I'm starting to figure out the order of operations that the movie is taking place in, which sucks. I think Barbarian did something with what is essentially a rug pull, but in the most enjoyable way that lets you are in complete unknown for the first half of the movie. And then you are almost in complete known for the second half of the movie. And while I don't think it entirely sticks its landing, I like that juxtaposition of where it puts you, the audience member, in the knowledge base of what the film is showing you and telling you. And I don't know, I find myself asking more and more when I'm watching movies like, man, I wonder if this is going to do a Barbarian thing. Like, and it very rarely does.
A great example of the type of filmmaker that you're talking about that did this in the 90s and it blew everyone's socks off was Quentin Tarantino with Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
A movie that starts in one place, then suddenly transforms into something else.
Yes.
And it completely changed the way we watch movies forever. I think Zach Krieger did an incredible job here. I think the movie is filled with those kinds of unusual surprises. It's really smartly written. And, like Jordan Peele with Get Out, I don't think it quite pinched the same nerve in terms of like a societal, but it is a very sharply structured thing. And to the extent, I think I talked about this when we did our companion review, which is that Zach Krieger's next movie, which a trailer has just been released for, called Weapons, was one of the most highly sought after screenplays, to the extent that Jordan Peele, the story goes, Jordan Peele fired his business manager who was not able to acquire the script for Weapons to be produced at Monkey Paw Production. That's the story. I don't know if that's exactly true, but it's a nice story.
Yeah.
So Weapons is coming out shortly, which I'm excited for. I was so taken by Barbarian that I made us go and see Companion because I thought it was the next Zach Krieger film, and only when we were there that I realized it wasn't. Although Zach Krieger produced that and I think may have done some writing on it.
And I liked Companion.
But here's where I'm going to make your day. I'm going to make your day so much.
How?
You know what Zach Krieger's next movie after Weapons is?
I do. It's Resident Evil.
It's Resident Evil.
I think that will be very, very good. I think that franchise in cinema needs a real shot in the arm. I don't know if you know what you really should play, Shahir, with your rig at work is Resident Evil 7 or 8.
I had one of them on the PlayStation and I was like, this is a beautiful game. It was one sitting like a swampland.
That's 7.
Yeah. And I was like, this is an extraordinary looking game. It's also making me really uncomfortable.
If you can play them in VR too, it is. So I'm replaying Resident Evil 4. They did a remake in VR, and it's just on PlayStation. It's you can do it. It is one of the greatest gaming experiences ever. And so I feel like Resident Evil, for those not paying attention to the gaming side of things, kind of fell off in after 4. In 5 and 6, no one really talks about those ones. And then 7, the swamp one, and then 8, Village, has reinvented it on the gaming side of things. And I have been a long proponent of the cinematic Resident Evil.
P.S. Anderson? No, P.W.
Mila's husband.
Yeah.
But they have run their course. And there was that other sort of soft reboot, like Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. And that didn't take off at all because I don't think, for all the guff we give the Resident Evil franchise for Mila's husband's crafting of it. The first one, while it doesn't follow any stories of the characters, does give you the same vibe as the video game, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think it would be really nice to see a reinvention like in the gaming side of things 7 and 8 did with Zach at the helm. So yeah, I'm very excited for that.
I think given that where this movie has ended up on your place, I think that's going to be a really important episode coming down the line. Unfortunately, the next 2 films of mine are awful in terms of like
what
are awful in terms of like the way that they are depicting humanity. If an alien watched these movies, they would think we should all be exterminated at this point. For good reason as well. My next film is from 2023 from a filmmaker who I absolutely adore. It was my number 1 film of that year. A music video director who has used his visual panache, I guess I would call it, for meaningful exploration of humanity's downfall. Again, or in this case, societal downfall. And this is the movie from 2023 that won Best Foreign Film that year was The Zone of Interest, which is my number 4 movie of this time. In terms of movies that scar, this is a movie that certainly leaves a scar. And I think, the Holocaust obviously is one of the most horrific examples of humanity on display, but it's not the only one. And I want to make sure that it's just that the last 2 films that I'm talking about are about the Holocaust.
Understood.
So I want to make that distinction. But
your next one is Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah. Can we add Schindler's List to this? I don't know. But again, I think about a problematic artist, Terry Gilliam, who made this observation about Schindler's List at the time, which was that Schindler's List is ultimately about the success of one human being in the face of the failure of the entire of humanity writ large. I think that's what he said. And Zone of Interest is really exploring the depths of the failure of humanity by looking at a family, the first family of Auschwitz, and their inability, not their willingness to look past the horrors that were going on around them. And there is nothing more striking than the image of children playing in a beautiful garden while we hear the sound of people being exterminated in the background. And I think that is this ability that is this sort of visual conceit or auditory conceit that Jonathan Glazer implored with that film. He's used a bunch of other sort of like observational techniques as well. And then the movie sort of transcended time through the end of it to sort of look to the future and the past and look directly at us as an audience as well. And I think, I feel like it's hard to quantify what period in history we're living in right now. I think I can just say that we just went through a once in a generation global pandemic. So
here's hoping.
Yeah, no, to not overstate that we are living through history, and I'm often thinking about how I respond to history or living history. And The Zone of Interest is a fascinating exploration of the reason why humanity fails and why the reason why society falls is because we are incapable of understanding the depths of horror that we are capable of, and that surround us.
I think it also is an excellent example of evil proliferates when you compartmentalize things too much. I think that that's the entirety of what the family is doing, right? Like in the movie,
there's an interesting thing in the film, which is that you realize as the film is going on, it's not that they've compartmentalized and put it to one side. It's that they're fully aware.
But that's what I'm saying. They're fully aware, and they've compartmentalized it as, oh, well, that's over the fence.
It's happening to other people. It's happening to people whom we don't care about.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I mean by compartmentalized. It's not that they're ignoring it. Yeah. They realize it's there, but that's not their problem.
Yeah. Or they're, you know what? It's a sort of weird way to say it. They wanted it.
Yeah, well, they wanted it. It's funny, and then a lot of as characters move the movie, and if you haven't seen Zone of Interest, definitely see the Zone of Interest. But like you can tell that it sort of like starts there at the very least, and then maybe over time, you know, you can only do that so much. I don't know. That is an exquisite film. It was my number 8, I think, of that year. Definitely sticks with. Also, the cinematography, I feel like, is the thing that really struck me in that movie a lot. Like, again, not by any means the same level of static composure as a pigeon sat on a branch, but like there are a lot of scenes that hold in a wide that almost look like a diorama. That display both the horrors and people being not ignorant of, but just living their lives around them. It's crazy. My number 4, this has some honorable mentions as well. You know, obviously it was 2024, so an honorable mention just to get you here mad would be The Fall Guy. But no, truly,
the movie of the decade,
The Fall Guy, starring Ryan Reynolds, not Ryan Reynolds, starring Ryan Gosling, the other Ryan, and Emily Blunt. And then another honorable mention, this is not my number 4, was Flow. Obviously, Flow, we've talked about ad nauseum at this. That was both your and my number 2 of that year.
Was my number 1?
I don't know. It's not in front of me. I just was talking about this. But my number.
No, it was my number 2.
You're right. My number 4 is I believe the last Netflix movie on the list, and that is Rebel Ridge.
Rebel Ridge.
Rebel Ridge. If we're going to transition from my number 5 Barbarian into number 4 Rebel Ridge. It comes from not the act of the story, like Barbarian's story twists surprised me, and I found I wanted it more. Rebel Ridge's quality and making a small thing feel large is what I wanted more of. I find this, I think I talked about it in our episode.
I just had a great dick joke there that I completely I let it slide.
Well, you didn't. You kind of slid it right in there. But the way that this movie, it has the gravitas and meaning behind it that I want every action movie to have. It has something like its violence has something to say. It is both understated and completely like overpowering at the same time. It speaks to real world racial tensions and injustices. It plays on tropes and what you expect in a couple different ways, kind of like Get Out does. It's funny because and it came out of nowhere for me. I didn't know anything about it. I think you said you'd like to do it on the podcast back in the day. And it truly is. I know I've mentioned this before. Like I am famously someone who doesn't like the film Drive. We've talked about this. I think the soundtrack and the cinematography are immaculate, but I've often made the joke, what happens when you deconstruct an 80s action movie? Nothing. And again, I know I am in the minority of that. That's totally fine.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, don't worry.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
But this is a deconstruction of essentially an 80s action movie. But like it breaks my entire argument apart. This is just how you do it, in my opinion. This movie is fucking great. I cannot believe, I mean, don't get me wrong. I can believe that it's not like as well sought out and known because it is a smaller film. But man, like I feel like this is a movie that if you showed it to literally anyone who likes action movies could actually change their brain a little bit into like seeking out other types of movies that are adjacent to it or like that are smarter than The Beekeeper. You know what I mean? Like I feel like this is a transitional and a transcendent film that can open people's eyes a lot. And
funny because then I would recommend them watching Drive after Rebel Ridge.
See, I wouldn't. I don't want to poo-poo Drive. We're celebrating today. I know. I fucking love this.
It's so good. Again, another example of us being prescient in some way, which is that we did Jeremy Saulnier's film Blue Ruin. Did we do Blue Ruin?
We didn't do Blue Ruin. We did
Green Room. Green Room. That's right.
So many colors.
And Rebel Ridge, I think, is the perfect dad movie for one. But yeah, like you're saying, it is an action movie that scars, and it features for me again one of what I think will be the early performances from an actor that we are going to come to see very often. If you go back to that episode, we talked about how he wasn't originally cast in that movie. In fact, they shot without him, or they shot with a different actor to begin with, and he came in as a last-minute replacement. But and I'm speaking, of course, of Aaron Pierre, who has been cast as the new Green Lantern in the Green Lantern show that is coming up. He's extraordinary in it. He holds your vision in a way that very few actors. It's a great movie. Jeremy Saulnier, I think I said this before, he's like the Sam Peckinpah of modern American cinema at this point, which is that he deploys violence in the perfect way. And like I haven't seen The Beekeeper, but
but this is the thing.
David Ayer film, Beekeeper.
Beekeeper is fine.
Yeah.
It is lowest common denominator, but also speaking to a real world issue that is happening in the background, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to poo-poo on like, oh, if you found meaning in The Beekeeper, or like the fact that old people are getting scammed out of their money, and then Jason Statham has to come and beat down the door of the fucking president of the United States. You can find it there.
Yeah.
It might take some digging,
yeah,
but you can find it. This movie, Rebel Ridge, has everything on display for you to discover at your leisure, and I do think it's sort of it's a film that has the opportunity to sort of rewire the way you think about these kind of movies. Yeah,
it's fantastic.
What's your number 3, buddy?
Also a societal downfall film.
Okay, good.
But one about Russia after the fall of Khrushchev, or after Russia, the rise of Khrushchev and the death of Stalin. The Armando Iannucci film, which, Armando Iannucci recently put on a play version of Dr. Strangelove. And Dr. Strangelove is one of my favorite films about the downfall of humanity, because we are such idiots. And that's what that film is about. And that's what Stanley Kubrick tapped into. And that is what Armando Iannucci taps into with the death of Stalin, which is that the reason societies fall is not just because of the capacity for horror, because we're also idiots. And he makes light of the way in which power, the people that circle power tend to be the kinds of people who should not be anywhere near power. And if you use your example like Rebel Ridge, Aaron Pierre's character is a character in there who does not seek power or attention, but is the kind of person who should be in authority because he would make the right kinds of decisions for people around him. In the death of Stalin, every character circling around the death of Stalin are people who ultimately are self-interested and who do not have the best capacity to make judgments for other people, which is what those roles are. And that is true of the Zone of Interest, and in Son of Saul, that he is the recipient of those of those horrors. So I love the death of Stalin. I think the death of Stalin as a comedy is hilarious, for one, but it is hilarious in a way that makes that scars. It stings when you watch that movie, because when you realize that the horrors are the comedy is based on the observation that we are capable of such terrible things, and maybe kind of like the Mitchells versus the Machines. It's extraordinary when an artist is so skillful and so insightful at the same time. I think Jesse Armstrong with Succession, he's got a movie coming out soon as well, I think kind of plays in that same toolbox of being able to take real world issues and find comedy in them, not for the sake of making fun of them, but to sort of see the absurdity in it. And it kind of requires the sort of like worldview, that's sort of top-down worldview.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I will say also, I think one of my top, it's not, Death of Stalin is not on my top 10 list of films of the decade, but I will say it is easily the top 3 of my favorite thumbnails we've ever done. The images of all of us looking goofy in a line with all the actors was very, very fun. And I believe for the longest time, on Facebook or something, one of the things where there's a banner, that was our banner, was us just like goofy with all those actors and from the Death of Stalin.
There was a day when I didn't have a beard and long hair.
Right. That's right. Yeah. To Be Young Again. No, that movie, I think I've only seen it twice.
Yeah.
It is so dark and so funny and so prescient of how human beings actually are.
You know, an interesting thing that you just mentioned. Some of these films I've only seen once,
which is fine.
And so when I went through the list, even though there were films that I only seen once, they were like, this is one of the most important films of the last 10 years.
The only one of the films that I have seen once in my list is one I've already done, and that was Barbarian. I've only watched Barbarian once. The rest of these for me are at least 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Many more.
Yeah.
My number 3 also it's about to sidle down, Falsha here.
Yeah.
It is my number 2 movie of 2016, and that is Captain America: Civil War.
Hey, you know what? I actually I'm not mad at this.
Marvel movie finally cracking the list.
Yeah. Very high.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Well, so let's back up for a second. The reason when looking at these, I really wanted to try to balance things that have been, that have been around for years and things that have not, right? But the thing I kept coming back to is, while oftentimes when looking at lists like this, I find myself enamored with the recent. That's just how memory works.
Recency bias.
But I feel like Captain America: Civil War does for the spectacle film something. Every Marvel movie up to that point had stakes and weight, in my opinion. Some did it better than others, but this was the one that, to be perfectly honest, made it took the conflict and made something both personal and like epic in scale. And it managed to balance that like on a knife's edge, I felt like, throughout the entirety of the film. And of course, I think why I find it even more impressive is because of its scope and scale. Like to be able to walk this line in that system is something that we've only seen, I think, once or twice. And
Batman v Superman certainly didn't.
No. Well, that's the thing, right? Because Civil War as a concept in the comics is literally an excuse to get the superheroes to fight each other. That's what it is. And you get that scene at the airport here, but by the time that happens, I understand the motivation of every character. And this is something that the Russos continue on in the other 2 Avengers movies that they did. They're able to balance so many different characters and different writing styles and how they would interact. And that's what sort of makes it interesting to me. Also, I think we forget a lot of times, how many plates this movie is spinning. This is where we meet Black Panther.
I recently rewatched Black Panther with my son, and I was like, Civil War is a better Black Panther story to me than Black Panther is.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's like a 10th of this movie. You know, and there's so much going on, and the consequences feel real, and that's something I think I'm always looking for, even in big blockbuster things. In fact, I have interesting thoughts on consequence in blockbuster cinema based on The Final Reckoning, which we'll be doing next week.
Yeah. So
I won't speak on that too much. Anyway, I truly at the drop of a hat, I would watch this movie and I get everything I want out of movies by watching Captain America: Civil War. There's some, if I am feeling, I want a big bombastic action movie, it's got that. If I want a character study, it's got that. If I want actual deep personal conflict that has a resolution that is difficult, it's got that. It's just, it works for any mood. And that is why it is on my number 3.
Not mad at it. Not mad at all. If you were going to pick Marvel movies, this is not a controversial choice anything like that. I think it's if you'd said Ant-Man versus Quantumania, I would have been like, what?
Yeah, that's my number 2. So just wait for it. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is a film from 2022 that was my number 1 of that film, which is a film that nobody has talked about since that time it came out. It was nominated for Best Picture at the time, and it was a last minute nominee that came in where everyone was like, hey, very few people had actually even gone to see it. But I feel like the last 4 films that I talked about, Death of Stalin, Zone of Interest, Son of Saul, the last 3 films, are about societal downfall. These next 2 films, to me, are about the opportunity for society to rebuild itself. And my number 2 movie, important movie for me as far as the decade is concerned, is Sarah Polley's film Woman Talking. which is a film about a group of Mennonite Mormons, I believe, who have endured years, lifetimes in many cases, of sexual assault from the men in their community, often while being drugged and have no recollection of it and are being gaslit into it, and who, over the course of 3 days, I believe, form a sort of forum to debate whether to leave the society entirely. Now, I don't think that is actually how this story really happened in real life.
Sure.
But the movie is this like community making a choice about how to move forward, and with and this is a community of people, women in this community who are powerless in this group, and who then form a new society, and who have to make difficult choices, like, do we take the boys in our community with us? Are they capable? Are all men capable of this horror? And the beauty of this film is its resolution and is its ending, but it's the kind of film I like, which is that it is a group of people sitting down, talking and debating ideas about how they're going to live life from this point forward. Yeah. Because a lot of times, I think you said the quote from I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is that we are a product of the people around us.
We're the product of I believe the quote was, if it was from
the choices of the people around us.
What you bring to the world is a product of someone else's doing.
Yeah. And this is a great example of that, and of saying, despite that, I'm going to form something.
Right.
And when I think back to movies of the decade, I've talked about the societal downfall, individual downfall, the horrors that human beings are capable of. And this is not an example of the beauty of things that people are capable of, but of the perseverance of people to go beyond the horrors that have been committed to them. So I love this movie. I've only seen it once, but it deeply, deeply.
Yeah.
And it, is something I'm going to think about. I'm going to show my son this movie when the time is right. And he's going to be annoyed at it because it's going to be a group of people just talking, as the title implies.
Well, maybe don't show it to him until he's into that thing.
Yeah, but we're going to do it. Yeah.
Well, my number 2 is also about societal downfall.
Deadpool versus Wolverine.
It's Deadpool versus Wolverine. No, it is from 2015. My number 1 and your number 2, a favorite of the podcast, Mad Max Fury Road. We've spoken ad nauseum.
We've done 2 episodes about it.
2 episodes about this, 7 years apart, probably, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the reason why we're here. It's also the reason why I think I was reminded that you can still be surprised at something like this when it was released. There's a reason why we wanted to talk about it, and we wanted to talk about it so much. It is, again, I know we shouldn't throw this term around, but I think it is a perfect film. Like, for instance, Furiosa is really good. I really, really like Furiosa. I don't think about Furiosa that much. I think about Mad Max Fury Road probably once a week. Like, there's it permeated culture in a way that I don't think any Mad Max film has ever done, and many films don't do. The language of that movie became sort of the publicly accepted language of what like post-apocalyptic life would kind of look like.
Yeah.
It's
oddly, it's a good companion piece to Women Talking, which is what will society look like after
the fact. Well, no, and I think there's something interesting to be said about sort of both of those films next to each other, because with Women Talking, it's who burned the world or whatever,
the 4 horsemen.
Yeah. And it's like the way that man has decimated or will decimate the world based on their own appetites, insecurities, delusions, etc. This is the natural conclusion of that, and trying to live through it and follow both Furiosa and Max as they are trying to save a group of women from Immortan Joe back to the green place, getting back to a place where the world wasn't like this. I don't know. Again, we've talked about this movie ad nauseum. We have 2 episodes on it. Please go back and listen to it if you want to hear our actual thoughts on it. But this movie is something that truly I think about almost more than any other movie.
Yeah. And the interesting thing for me about Mad Max Fury Road is that Furiosa doesn't diminish Mad Max Fury Road in any way, despite being like not necessarily a successful film. I actually think they work together really well.
Yeah.
Both those 2 films work together very
I would
well.
like to someday, if I ever have this amount of time, I'd like to watch them back to back, and I'd
Yeah.
like to watch Furiosa then Fury Road, and I think it would it'd be really solid.
We watched Furiosa, we rewatched Furiosa, and the ending of Furiosa is really, really
Yeah.
I think about the ending of Furiosa more than I think about most things in Fury Road. But I think Fury Road, it is, like we talked about this, and it's evident in these lists that there's a distinction between what we want in films and the way we talk about it, and that's why the podcast works. Mad Max Fury Road is the nexus between all of our interests in one place, and it's a big, beautiful cacophony of destruction and joy.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to wrap this up. My number 1 film is, as far as talking about films where society is healing itself, groups is healing itself, is a film where society does not exist anymore.
Oh.
And there are, in fact, no human beings in this film.
Wow.
And I think by saying that, you know which film I'm talking about. It is the film that was my best film of the year it was my second favorite film of the year last year. That is Flow. A film about an abandoned or lost cat that has been struck by the flood, much like Noah's famous journey, and who gets upon an ark where there are other creatures with whom it cannot communicate with, which does not share the same language, but who form a kind of makeshift community that is based purely on gestures and a sort of basic understanding of basic needs, not human needs, but basic needs.
Sure.
Food, shelter, play. And there is a sort of transcendent quality to this film. Again, kind of like The Death of Stalin, it has this sort of global overview of the world. And it is made by such a young filmmaker as well.
Again, all in Blender.
All made in Blender. And oddly, my number 8 film, Mitchell's versus the Machine, is about a movie about the fight against artificial intelligence and computational power against humanity. Flow is a movie made using that technology, using not necessarily artificial intelligence, but using animation techniques that were not available some 20, 30 years ago. And continuing to prove that humanity's greatest gifts are our ability to form community, which is another film that I think about was The Society of the Snow. Our ability to form communities in moments of terror or moments of horror, and also our ability to make art.
Yeah.
Like that is one of our greatest gifts, is our ability to make a film like Flow, which tells us that even though society has fallen, there is still hope for the thing that we call humanity, even though that film is about creatures and animals.
Yeah, Flow is absolutely wonderful. I think I've in recent memory is the film that I have evangelized to the most people. It's funny because a lot of my stuff on, especially at the top of this list, like Captain America: Civil War and Mad Max: Fury Road, Parasite, these are films that many people have heard of.
Yeah.
And Flow was something that even after the Oscars, I've told people in animation, and friends, and they've been like, "What? This is what? It was what? It was Blender? What?" Yeah. And then they come back and they're freaking out that they did. This is a movie that, again, I feel like you could show anyone and they would find something to connect with. It's beautiful and poignant, and again, from a super young filmmaker, which is amazing to see how deep and detailed, and not a huge team.
No.
Anyway, Flow is wonderful. So that's a great number 1. My number 1 is the polar opposite of Flow. It was back in 2018. It was actually my number 1, and it's the only other Marvel movie to crack the list.
I know what it is. Yeah.
It is Infinity War, Avengers: Infinity War. I know Endgame in our current, which did not make my list, mind you. I feel like gets a lot of the sort of glory, that movie, that moment at the end that was filmed in the theaters with the Avengers assemble and Thor picking up, or Cap picking up the hammer and all that stuff. Yeah. And again, I keep backing up and backing up. Moments like that sound trite and silly, but it is the buildup of a community of people that have followed stories that has become a modern day mythology.
Yeah.
That was sort of like the Endgame was like the release of that.
Yeah.
I think Endgame is special and good in its own right. I think Infinity War is the best Marvel movie to have ever been made. It's also one that couldn't have existed without all of the other ones sort of coming beforehand for all of the assists and the setup.
Yeah.
But it is a movie that is built around, and I think this is such a smart exercise. It's a movie built around building up an antagonist. And Thanos, Josh Brolin as Thanos it's so funny because you see a frame of him and he just looks goofy as fuck. But like in the movie, he feels ever present and like a threat and like we are learning about him. And it is truly real stakes on a massive scale. And it does what great films like Empire did back in the day. It ends on a down note. And we know another one is coming. And due to the machinations of Hollywood and franchises, we know that many people who were affected by the snapping would somehow come back. Mm-hmm. But it felt like there was actual stakes. It felt like this could be the end of many of the heroes that you'd seen and known and come to love. It felt like the pain that people were going through in this movie, Thor, Wanda and Vision, Gamora, all felt incredibly real. Again, in a genre that is not often known for having those things be that effective. And I think it was an incredibly pivotal film for me. I think it was actually very emotionally I think it tapped into a lot of emotionality that people going to see these movies wasn't ready for and didn't know that they were going to get.
Yeah.
And this one just delivers. I think every time I watch it, and I've seen it probably 15 times at this point, I think I find something new, another small detail that a character does that either is a payoff from something else or something that's moving forward. And I don't know. The balancing act is super exquisite, and it is a sad movie, which is a weird thing to like. There are moments of sadness in a lot of Marvel films, but I feel like you're just watching this entire movie, and things are getting worse and worse and worse, and then it ends.
Yeah.
And there's something I think even tying back to the entirety of my list of sort of like. Movies are a thing that I think can fill a lot of loneliness in certain ways. Obviously, people are the way you feel loneliness in general, but like you can look at depictions of the way that other people are in trouble or alone or going through something and find meaning. Again, going back to I'm thinking of ending things. You can find you find meaning in you design your life, or you are the things that you consume. And I think that Infinity War is a really great encapsulation, especially, not to get political, but like we are, I feel like, closing in on the end of Infinity War in life right now. And I think it's important to, see what's going on, know what's happening, etc., but also know that due to many of the other films that we've talked about here and the eventuality of in this franchise of Endgame, you can go and fall off the literal precipice, but you can sort of claw your way back up. And I don't know. Infinity War is just chef's kiss, no notes.
As we are talking, I have been entering these movies into
the Topam 3000.
Yeah, I have a Letterboxd account, by the way. Follow me at Shahir D at Letterboxd, and I've been writing more reviews. Actually, just interestingly, I was in New Zealand a couple of years ago, and I found a hard drive which had a bunch of old reviews that I'd written.
Oh, okay. I thought you found one on the street. I was like, you plugged that in? It was your hard drive.
My hard drive.
Okay, great.
With a bunch of like my old reviews that I'd written that had been published in New Zealand. So I started uploading them into Letterboxd, and I've been filling them in. But I've been, as we've been talking, I have been adding these films into two separate Letterboxd lists that we can publish once this episode is out. It's funny that the thing that made us different in 2015 when we first started this podcast is still very evident here today when I look at these lists. And I think that's a great thing. Like, I really do think that is a great thing that our lists speak to both who we are individually.
And we didn't have a crossover. And we didn't have one crossover here, did we? There's no movie on here that made both of our lists, right?
Not a single one.
Yeah.
Not a single one. Yeah, not a single
I thought perhaps there'd be one or two. Maybe.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, I think the only one two. I thought possibly Get Out and Parasite.
Yeah, those are the two.
And Mad Max, maybe, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the 2 or 3 that I would have definitely probably put on my list if we had more than 10.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with my list, and I like your list as like, these are the 2 things. I think your list is much more in line with what popular culture would say are the movies of the decade. Like Get Out, Parasite, Infinity War certainly are the most impactful, biggest, pinched a nerve kind of movies. And like when you were talking about Infinity War, I remember being in the theater and the moment when T'Challa was snapped.
Yep.
And the horror.
Yeah.
The sheer horror on people's faces. I mean, like hearing it in the theater when that happened.
It's quiet, so quiet in the theater.
Oh no, there was like audible, oh my God, no, this can't be happening kind of thing. So I completely see that world as well. So yeah, this has been really interesting. I think
what a decade.
What a decade has been. Do we still fight about, is my cat going to take on Captain America? No, my cat's got to fight Thanos to figure out which is going to be the movie of the decade, the actual movie of the decade.
That's right. So the Cat and Flo versus Thanos. You can email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com and give your cinematic reasonings as how that fight would go and who would win.
And this is not an opportunity for you to come in with your own movies of the decade, even though we would love to hear them. You have to pick between Flo and Infinity War.
Oh, yeah.
You have to make a choice.
And seriously, if you've made it this far, even if you're not a writer and you don't want to write us a big thing, just send us an email with one of those titles. It can just be that. You don't we'd love it if you went into detail as to why. You also do not have to. So again, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. If you've made it here, why not?
Yeah. I think an interesting thing to go out on, it has been, this decade has been a pleasure. And are we going to be doing this for another decade?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, with the technology, no matter where we end up in the world, we kind of can if we want to.
Time zones are going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But we could still do this.
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun to play the first minute, maybe, or I don't know where you've cut it, of our first episode where we introduced ourselves to the world as Matt and Shahir, 2 knuckleheads in Brooklyn, talking about Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, let's play that. We'll have that take us out, and then I'll just have our end music play right after we get enough of. When you get enough of that, you've been listening to us for around 2 hours, so we won't berate the topic, but let's see how much we sound different from when we started.
Wild, younger, more optimistic, hopeful, glimmers of hope in our eye.
Well,
we haven't been beaten down by the world at this point.
Before we time travel back 10 fucking years, Shahir, when you are not reviewing films for 10 years, where can folks find you?
You can find, you know what? I'll plug the Letterboxd page. Shahir D at Letterboxd is where I'm writing, putting reviews up. That's where you can find me.
Nice,
Matt. When you are snapping us back to 2015 in a DeLorean, where can people find you?
You can find me just being perfectly balanced, as all things should be, over at my website's Extra History and Extra Credits. I believe by this point, our Mutiny on the Bounty series will be out. Holy fuck, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Robert Rath, who's been on the show before, absolutely killed writing this one. And Allie, who I brought up about Mitchell versus the Machines, did the art. It is so fucking great. Please go check that out. All right. Well, I guess there's nothing left to do but say great 10 years, Shahir.
Yeah, let's catch up in another 10.
And without further ado, take it away, Shahir and Matt.
Ooh.
What is going on, Internet? Welcome to the Mad Max Fury Road podcast. That's right. We're the only Mad Max Fury Road podcast available.
Yeah, I haven't heard a single other
No,
podcast.
not at all. My name is Matthew Kroll. With me is
Shahir Dowd.
And we are going to spend the next hour basically breaking down the film. And I feel like it's necessary, Shahir, because we are, in fact, the only Mad Max podcast available.
Are we the only two people that saw Mad Max this week?
I mean, sadly, when you go up against Pitch Perfect 2,
yeah, we're the only two guys that saw.
We are the only guys.
Yeah.
But who, out of these two guys in this room talking to you, coming through your ears, going into your brains right now, who the hell are these two guys? You might be asking.
You could ask that question.
Shahir, who the hell are you?
I'm a guy. You might have noticed I have a funny accent. I'm from New Zealand originally. Well, actually, I'm from Fiji originally, then New Zealand. Now I live in the United States.
Show off.
Yes, and my accent is all over the place.
You're right.
I'm a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I am a director, editor. I work in commercials, TV, music videos.
A jack of all trades, if you will.
Jack of all trades, writer, director, and will be making a feature film one day in the future.
One day. Ask me who I am.
Matthew Kroll. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I was born in Massachusetts, moved to New Hampshire.
Too far.
No, I am also a media professional in New York City. I was an editor originally, and I have made a couple shorts. I am now producing, and I'm currently working on a couple series. So, yeah, we have enough sort of production chops. Not a lot, but enough, I would say.
More importantly, we love movies. We love to, we could spend hours,
which you're going to hear. I just wanted to give them out there a little bit of who the hell are these people? That you just want to kind of know who's talking.